There was a time when America did not just make cars. We made the template for how the entire modern world would build things. Our factories were the envy of every nation on earth. Our workers earned wages that turned them into the very customers buying the products off their own assembly lines. It was a perfect machine, an industrial ecosystem that had never existed before and has never been replicated since. Then, decision by decision, we killed it. Not all at once, slowly, deliberately, and the consequences are still destroying us today. To understand what we lost, you have to know what we actually built. In 1913, Henry Ford introduced the moving assembly line in Detroit. What had taken 12 hours to build now took 93 minutes. 1 year later, Ford doubled the standard industrial wage to $5 a day, not out of charity, out of genius. He understood that the man building the car needed to be able to buy the car. That insight created a virtuous cycle of high production, high wages, and high demand, and it became the engine of the entire American economy. For every dollar the auto industry generated, another $4.23 rippled outward through suppliers, dealers, service shops, and the communities surrounding them. By the 1950s, the Big Three controlled 92% of every car sold in America. The automobile wasn't just transportation, it was the American dream given 4 wheels and a chrome bumper. That world felt permanent. It wasn't. By the late 1960s, cracks were forming. Volkswagen Beetles were multiplying in American driveways. Toyota and Datsun were entering the market with something Detroit had never taken seriously: small, reliable, fuel-efficient cars built for people who needed transportation, not status symbols. Detroit faced a genuine choice: invest in engineering, improve quality, build cars that would last, or protect margins, cut costs, and let the accountants run the show. The accountants won. And accountants don't build great industries. They dismantle them slowly enough that nobody notices until it's too late. The cost cutting started invisibly. Thinner steel, cheaper interiors, engines designed to reach 50,000 miles instead of 150,000. Then came 1973 and the oil crisis hit like a hammer. Gas lines stretched for miles. Prices quadrupled. Suddenly, every oversized, gas-thirsty American car was a liability on 4 wheels. A Cadillac Eldorado got 8 miles per gallon. A Toyota Corolla got 25 miles per gallon and did not break down. Detroit had been building bigger and cheaper, while Japan had been building leaner and better. When the crisis exposed that gap, Americans did not switch because they wanted to. They switched because they had no other option. The Chevy Vega, the Ford Pinto, engines that seized before 50,000 miles, bodies that rusted through before the loan was paid off. Then the Pinto memo. Ford's internal calculation was that it was cheaper to pay wrongful death settlements than to fix the fuel tank. When that leaked, something irreplaceable died. Not just brand loyalty, American confidence in its own hands. But here is where the story gets darker, because Detroit didn't learn. It found a new loophole. In the 1970s, federal fuel economy standards, the CAFE regulations, contained a quiet exception. Vehicles over a certain weight, classified as trucks, face significantly looser requirements than passenger cars. Detroit saw the opening and drove a full-size pickup through it. By the 1980s and the 1990s, the pivot to SUVs and light trucks was complete. These vehicles carried margins that sedans could not touch. The Ford F-Series became the best-selling vehicle in America for 40 consecutive years. The strategy looked like a comeback. It was actually a trap. By abandoning sedans and small cars entirely, Detroit handed those segments permanently to Toyota, Honda, Hyundai, and Kia. The Big Three became specialists in large, expensive, fuel-heavy vehicles that the rest of the world did not want. American cars abroad became perceived as brutish and oversized. The industry had retreated into a high-margin corner of the market and called it victory. Meanwhile, the world was preparing the next revolution: electric vehicles. America was asleep. In 2025, global electric vehicle registrations hit 20 million units. China alone accounted for 12.9 million of those. China now produces 70% of the world's electric vehicles and nearly 80% of its lithium-ion batteries. The United States produced less than 1.6 million electric vehicles in the same period, with growth essentially flat at 1%. In China, you can buy an electric vehicle for under $10,000. In America, the average electric vehicle transaction price sits above $50,000. Nearly 90% of American electric vehicle models are large SUVs. The industry built for the rich and called it the future. Meanwhile, the middle class it once created can no longer afford the product it once made accessible. The industry didn't transition, it stalled, and then it retreated. In July 2025, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act eliminated federal tax credits for electric vehicles entirely. It replaced them with a deduction on car loan interest, a benefit that only reaches its full value on loans exceeding $110,000. The policy was sold as relief for working families. It was structured for people buying six-figure trucks. The same story, different decade. Protect the short-term margin, ignore the long-term direction. Stellantis, the company that now carries Chrysler, Jeep, and Ram, reported a net loss of 22.3 billion euros for 2025. Their CEO admitted they had overestimated the pace of the electric transition and announced a pivot back to combustion engines. New Dodge Chargers with Hemi 5.8 engines. New Ram trucks with traditional powertrains. The retreat dressed as a strategy. In March 2026, overall American auto sales fell nearly 12% year over year. General Motors dropped 16%. Ford dropped 13%. This is what the end of an industrial empire looks like. Not a single explosion, a long, managed decline punctuated by losses too large to hide. And the consumer is paying for all of it. In 2026, there is not a single new car available in America for under $20,000. The average new vehicle transaction price has crossed $50,000. The average auto loan now runs 72 to 84 months. Americans are spending more than 30% of their take-home income servicing car debt. The average age of a new car buyer is now 50 years old. An entire generation of younger Americans has been priced out of the market entirely. The industry that once built the middle class by making workers into consumers has transformed the automobile into a 6-year debt sentence that most people under 40 cannot afford. Henry Ford's virtuous cycle ran in reverse: lower wages relative to prices, longer loans, smaller audience, shrinking confidence. In 1994, the Big Three manufactured nearly 10 million vehicles inside the United States. By 2024, that number had fallen to 4.6 million, less than the output of foreign brand factories operating on American soil. The parts in the average American car today are 18% domestic. In 2007, it was 38%. We kept the nameplate and offshored everything underneath it. Walk through any classic car show and you will see a 1957 Chevy Bel Air gleaming under the sun. You will see a 1965 Mustang with its original paint, a 1969 Dodge Charger that a man has spent decades restoring, because it represents something he cannot find anywhere else. These cars sell for $50,000, $100,000, and $150,000 now. Not because they were the most technologically advanced vehicles ever built, because they were built when American industry still believed that the product itself was the point, that the worker mattered, that the customer deserved something solid. Detroit didn't fail because Japan got lucky. It didn't fail because oil embargoes were unforeseeable or because electric vehicles came from nowhere. It failed the same way it always failed. The people making the decisions chose this quarter over the next decade. They chose the margin over the mission. They chose the loophole over the leap. We had the talent, we had the workforce, we had the heritage and the infrastructure and the customers who desperately wanted to believe in what we made. The ingredients for greatness were always there. We just kept choosing something smaller.